It may sound corny, but I once thought that growing this stuff was out of the realm of the backyard grower.
Thousands of kernels later, of course that isn't true, and corn is one of the easiest crops to grow.
Generally direct seeded, corn is super simple to grow in most zones, and when planted right, this is a crop that won't give you too much trouble. There's more than a few dozen varieties to choose from, but they're all pretty much planted, grown, and cultivated in the same way.
So today, I got 6 things to consider when planting your corn. 6 tips to get yours started off right so that in 2 to 3 months when the corn harvest happens, it won't disappoint.
Modern corn is a large, tall, fast growing tropical grass with origins from southern Mexico. Of all the grains people grow around the world, none is cultivated more than corn. As an annual, corn is grown, harvested, cut down, and then replanted every year. It doesn't come back on its own.
As such, each year we get to pick a new variety to grow. But even though they're all pretty much grown the same way, there are a few things to consider when choosing your corn.
Speed and days to maturity, sweetness type, stalk height, and color are all key characteristics that can vary from variety to variety. Colder climates and lower zones with shorter summers and less time to grow are of course gonna pick the quicker varieties. Higher zones and warmer regions pretty much have the pick of the corn bunch as they've got the time to grow. Even better, those zones have enough time that they can plant corn 2, maybe even 3 or more times a year.
Speaking of time, our next corn planting tip is timing or when to plant. If you're in zones 8 or lower, this one is of particular interest.
Corn is a fast growing crop, yes, but it's also very tropical and very cold intolerant. It has to be grown in that precious summer window where the temperatures reach at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit and above. In fact, don't plant your corn outside until the soils reach at least 65. Usually, 2 weeks after your last spring frost date is fine, but again, it's always best to check the actual temperature.
Creating that temperature is, of course, the sun, which leads us into our third corn planting tip. And that's location, because corn is very much a full sun crop.
Your spot to plant the seeds must get at least 6 to 8 hours of full direct sun per day for the corn to thrive. It will grow big, green, fat, and lush in the shade, but it likely won't produce very much corn. This crop is a typical wide open space grass, and we need to treat it as such.
With variety, timing, and location all figured out, we're almost ready to plant our corn. Before we do, though, let's talk about the soil.
The best soil for corn is a loose but not too light blend. It should be high in organic content, drain freely but hold moisture relatively well, and be a pH between 6 and 6.8. Corn is an obnoxiously heavy feeder, so soils that are augmented with compost are really going to help this crop thrive and lessen the need for external fertilizing.
For me, I've got the perfect location for my corn this year, and I'm going to be planting it in this well exposed 8-foot raised bed.
I've kept the topsoil covered and protected all winter, but still the volume has shrunk. Not unexpected, so I'm going to take this opportunity to augment this bed and refill it up with some compost and good topsoil. This will help to create the perfect landing pad to germinate our corn. The seeds are tough and easy to sprout, yes, but why not give them the best start?
So let's go ahead and prep the bed, and while we do, let's tackle those final 2 tips, after which we can finally plant our corn.
First, I'm going to clear off the bed of all those pots and containers that have served as a protector for the topsoil for the last 6 months. Bare, exposed soil in the garden is a no-no, and even when you're not growing anything, such as over winter, we still need to be mindful of it. Okay, with the bed cleared, it's time to weed. Normally, I'm not too fussy about the weeds, especially the small ones that are just going to get buried and eventually choked out. Plus, it's not like corn is a slow grower that can't compete. However, it is a crop that doesn't like the soil disturbed, and it's generally advised to stop all weeding after the corn reaches about a foot in height. So, I'm going to weed a little bit more diligently now, and then again in a couple of weeks after the corn has sprouted.
Okay, with the bed all cleared of weeds, we're now ready to add in some more soil.
I'm just going to use my own compost, augmented with some store-bought topsoil. Nothing fancy or expensive, just good dark earth containing all the properties we talked about earlier. Corn needs a minimum of about 12 inches of soil to grow properly, but all of my raised beds are open bottom. I'll put as much soil back into this guy as possible, but I'm not going to break the bank to fill it all the way to the top. If the roots need more soil, they can find their way out the bottom into the ground. It seems like a lot of work for one single raised bed, but this isn't something that has to be done every year. This is a new bed system that I just put together last year. The bottom 1/3 was filled with wood and organics in a sort of hugelkultur process. So it was no surprise when the soil sank about 6+ inches. I'll add in this topsoil layer here, plus a layer of mulch, plus a chop and drop in the fall, and quite likely this bed will be ready to go in the spring with no extra work. The compost is kind of clumpy, but this is one crop that won't mind at all. Also, corn is no shrinking violet, so I'm going to go ahead and tamp down that topsoil layer to make it perfectly even and level. A nice blank slate is what you want because it makes the corn seeding so much easier.
Okay, it's finally time to plant. The bed is all nice and level, and it's ready to receive those corn seeds. However, it's super hot out today, like really hot, and I want to give those seeds the best environment to start their lives.
The last thing we want to do is go ahead and plant dozens of corn seeds only to have them sprout up, wither away, and die. Since corn seeds are not soaked overnight like our peas, we're going to go ahead and soak the bed instead. One good soaking is not enough though. It barely even penetrates the surface. This might be a situation where we soak it multiple times before and after planting, or we simply soak it overnight. The one thing that can't happen is for those seeds to sprout and then go dry. Remember, we want the best for our corn, and a good start is everything.
Okay, it's finally time to get our corn seeds into the ground. Now, with corn, it's a little bit different than our other crops in that the seeds can actually be planted at 2 different depths. It's fully dictated by where and when you're growing.
For fast-growing varieties sown in the spring, plant your corn seeds shallow, no deeper than about an inch. For those sown in the warmer months and in warmer climates, plant your corn at double that depth at around 2 inches. We do this to avoid that topsoil evaporation and the seeds drying out. The depth really does matter, but it's not as important as the next one.
For corn to be successful, though, it's all about the spacing.
Most plants have defined spacing requirements. It's not unusual. Their roots don't want to compete for nutrients and water, and their canopies don't want to fight for the light.
With corn, though, there's a third factor, and that's pollination.
Corn is almost exclusively wind and gravity pollinated, so it must be planted surprisingly close for such a large crop. The female pollen tubes on the developing ear, known as silks, catch the airborne pollen falling from the flowers at the top of the stalk, known as tassels. Each one of those silks connects to a single kernel, and without pollination, that kernel will not develop. As such, we need to plant our corn in blocks rather than long, skinny rows. The seeds need to be spaced about 8 to 10 inches apart, but in blocks containing 3 to 4 rows. This will ensure adequate coverage and good pollination. Now, some growers will sow 2 to 3 seeds per spot just to ensure 100% germination as well as no empty spaces in the block, but only do this if the seeds are cheap. Planting goes quickly, and you can either pre-make the holes and plunk the seeds inside, or place the seed on the top of the soil and simply push it down. Either works great, and an 8-foot bed can be planted in about 2 minutes. Like with most things gardening, it's all about the prep. Mulch and water heavily, and at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or above, your corn should sprout in about a week.
It's all quite simple with corn, and honestly, if you nail down that timing and spacing, you're over halfway there. Still though, that was a lot of info we covered. Let's go ahead and recap the main points to make sure that they all stick.
Corn is definitely not out of the reach of the home grower, provided we have the space and it gets the start it needs. Variety, timing, location, soil, depth, and spacing. These are the main parameters we need to look out for when we're planting our corn. With this crop, solving the timing and spacing alone gets us halfway there already, making the rest of this stuff a walk in the park. Corn is an amazing crop like no other. Sure, we can simply buy the ears at the store, but the way those sugars break down, we've only got about 48 hours before they lose their sweetness.
Which is why growing our own is so much better. Hopefully these 6 tips and all the other info we covered help you to your best corn year yet. As always, guys, happy growing, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks so much for stopping by and doing some gardening with me. Now more than ever, there's a huge benefit to growing our own food at home. Please consider subscribing and checking out this playlist here. Also, sign up for my free courses using the link on the screen as we dive even deeper into the world of backyard vegetable gardening.